Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Jimmy Jim James Show. We have a discussion today. I always believe that everybody has a story, and so one of the things that I wanted to address ended up coming up on the Daily Mail in an article that said more than half of recent college graduates say they're not emotionally prepared for a 9 to 5 job. The survey found that the majority of young professionals feel burnt out every week as huge numbers blame colleges for failing to prepare them. This is Generation Z clan, just getting out of college, going to get a job. And it's appropriate, I guess, that they do point the finger because people point the finger when they have no accountability. And obviously, Generation Z is suffering from that. I just want to say a few things. When I first started my company, JLA Real Estate Group, 13 years ago, I was astounded by the lack of professionalism and the lack of knowing what to do by we've got 4 colleges here in the town where my business is, and how they would show up and be improperly dressed, didn't have correct manners, would show up late, and it really, really aggravated me to the point that I contacted someone at UCR, the University of California, Riverside, and I actually gave a couple classes on prepping for interviewing in college. I think it's something that should be done in all colleges. I think they should have classes in high school on how to apply to colleges. I think that I was a person who put myself through college. I graduated from USC. Gabby graduated from UCLA.
Let's go Bruins.
We still love each other. And so so I had to go through all of those things and figure it out. I wish I had had someone that told me that there was so many grants and money out there that I could get, because I didn't come from a wealthy family, to further my education. I had to figure all of that out for myself. But let's get back to the heated topic of who should be responsible for these kids. That all of a sudden they're out of college and they're stressed out and the mental numbers are not good. They're suffering from anxiety and depression. My view on the topic is that it's not the college's fault for not preparing these kids, because that's not what colleges do. That's what parents do. I think that we, in a society today, that everybody who's a parent wanted a better life for their kids than they had. And so what happens is all of these people when I say everybody's got a story, everybody has a story because of how they were raised, right? And so, people look at, let's say girls, for instance, maybe when they were younger, they didn't get certain things. Might not have gotten the dresses they wanted. They might not have gotten the clothing they wanted. And let's say for boys, maybe they didn't get the sports things that they wanted or whatever. They didn't get a car when they were supposed to. So they then go have children and they say, well, I'm going to rectify this because this was so horrible what happened to me. And so I'm going to make sure that my daughter, she gets everything. She gets all the pretty dresses. She gets makeup. I want her to be, not have to be judged or made fun out of. She's going to have all the latest and greatest. And what I know from my own life, looking back on everything that I've been through, the ups and the downs, it has made me the person that I am today. And I think that I think parents need to get better educated about raising children, and that you're not doing any good to your child by giving them anything. And part of the problem, where I'm going with this is the reason why these kids are so stressed out is this. They've grown up their whole life with someone doing everything for them. When I was young, soccer wasn't around, but we had baseball, t-ball, softball, and nobody, nowadays everybody gets a trophy. Everybody's a winner. Everybody's equal. We don't want anybody to feel bad about themselves. Well, get it. Let's get this straight, is that that's not reality. So when
Yeah.
these kids now are in jobs where they're going to be told that they're not doing something right, or not behaving properly, or that they need, they're getting discipline and feedback from their bosses, they're not able to take it. Why? Because they've never been told they're less than.
Right. I just think like Gen Z, they're just coming from a sheltered place. And a lot of, like you said, the parents that were going through these situations and talking to these kids, they really didn't set their kids up for success. And it's sad.
Right.
It's sad that these kids aren't set up for success. And when they get into the workforce or they graduate college, what college really is, it's a buffer. It gives you the opportunity from the time you're 18 to really mature and to learn and
Right.
to really become an adult and to learn how the world works.
Right.
And once you graduate college, you should know all the basic things
Right.
of life. And unfortunately, if your parents don't teach you coming out of that state and coming out of that progression of allowing you to grow into this human being that you need to grow to be an adult, to work at a job and have professionalism, like, unfortunately, that's not the case these days.
Right. And you know how I know? I know because I've seen my nephews and nieces that have gone to colleges far away, and they come back a different person that first semester. Why? Because they're on their own. They've had to do their own laundry. They've had to figure out what their meals are going to be. They're being productive citizens with responsibilities.
Right.
So I always tell, because I've got some friends that, like, we want our child to be right next door and go to the school in the same town. And I'm like, no, get them out, get them to Europe, get them back east, move them as far away as you can, because that's how you get developed as a human being. That's how it's life experiences. And that's the thing, is these kids have no life experiences. They grow up with no life experiences, just being shuttled around in the back of a car, fed, clothed, told to do their homework, and they go their merry little way. And then all of a sudden, they get into college, and I'm sure their parents are still helicoptering all around and taking care of little Johnny boy and talking to them, every single day, and so forth and so on. And then finally, they go out and get a job if they can get one. That's a whole nother show. But and then what do? They come up with life's problems.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're not out there, and so what I'm saying is, if these kids would have responsibilities of doing things at a young age, they would get little bits and pieces of it, right? I mean, I had a
Exactly.
paper route. I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to get on my bicycle, 10-speed bike, go down the hill to a garage, fold all the papers, load them back in this is at 5 in the morning, load them all in my little saddle bags that I had on the back of the bike, throw them to each and every person's house, right? And then what I'd have to do is, at the end of that, and that went on every single day.
Right.
That's 7 days a week, because everybody gets the paper. And some people, Sundays were worse, because there were people that got the paper only on Sundays, but then you had all the other people that got it, 6 days or 7 days. So you had that on top. And then at the end of the month, I'll never forget this, at the end of the month, we'd have to collect the money. So we had to pay the press enterprise the money for the papers, and then we had to go collect it from the households. And these sons of bitches would give you the runaround. And it was like $3 and something. Maybe that's the quality today of $20, let's say.
Right.
And they came up with every excuse, wouldn't answer the door. And the only time we could go is not during the weekdays, was Saturday and Sunday. So you had to beg for the money, and you had to peek in the windows and see that they were there and say stuff. And then you had to determine, okay, am I going to still carry this account and take the risk of not getting paid next week, or am I going to shut them off?
Right.
So, and I learned that at like 13 years old. Like, those are life experiences that you get little by little by little if you're out there doing them. The problem is, these kids don't have the opportunity. And part of it, I don't mean to be too hard on the parents, but they can really decide whether their kid needs to be doing, every single sport, every single month, every single day. And also, I think with education and social pressure of everybody, fighting for an A and fighting for a B and getting into colleges, and it's gotten so fierce to do that these kids can't even get a job at that point. But I think we could do it. We could do a better job of maybe the grade school, junior high, where it's not going to matter that much. When you get into high school, then your grades are serious, so you can get into college. But we've got to allow these kids to not. I mean, I think they finally just went. Maybe this last year they went back to giving trophies to not everybody. But I mean, that was the stupidest thing I ever heard. I mean, I was teased and ridiculed and called names my whole entire life. Like, I went through hell. And I look back and think of it as a gift.
Right.
Because it made me the determined, hard-driving person that I am today to succeed and to figure out things in my life and overcome. I've overcame a lot, right? Why? Because I had to overcome a lot when I was young. I had to figure out, how am I going to get people to like me? This person's an asshole. I need to treat them this way. They're all life lessons. These kids, nobody's getting.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a parent and I have 2 kids, and it's so important for me to give my kids the tools to succeed, but I'm not going to do it for them.
Right.
And that's such a huge thing with me growing up. My parents never did it for me. I always worked very hard for the things that I've accomplished. I was an athlete. I got to college. I graduated college. Everything that I did, I earned because I worked hard for it. And I teach my kids the same values, because if they don't know now, and my kids are young, I have a 4 and a 7-year-old, but even with my 7-year-old, I instill it in him that you have to work hard. You don't have to be the best, but you're going to be one of the best.
Right.
And the way that you do that is by practicing. It's by learning all the things you need to learn to be successful.
Right.
And I'm going to teach you and give you all those fundamental tools now so that you succeed later on in life.
Right.
And that's what's super important. In a lot of these kids, unfortunately, like this Gen Z that is growing up, and it's sad to say, because my sister, she's borderline Gen Z. We grew up in the same household, but we grew up very different. We're 6 years apart, and she went to college, and my parents still pay for her rent.
Yeah.
But I moved out of the house when I was 18, and I haven't been back since.
Right.
And it's just that fundamental of like, everything comes easy. My parents are always going to be there.
Right.
And it's that mindset that they have. And unfortunately, like, it's almost like a shelter. And these kids,
is a shelter.
Yeah.
That's why she's going to have a really tough time ever taking care of herself.
Right. And, nowadays with social media and all these other things, people, they're looking for the easy way out.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking to not work and not to work that 9 to 5 and not to have that responsibility. But like, even if you don't work a 9 to 5, you still have to work hard.
Right.
You still have to work towards something. Like, it doesn't just pop up and all of a sudden I have $1 million in my bank account. I wish. Right. But
yeah, that's a whole nother show.
That's not
they want everything right now.
Right then and there. Yeah. And like, it's sad, but it's like, that's not how the world works. And you have to work hard for the things that you want. Like, if you want to be a TikTok star or a social media star, by the way, subscribe. You have to work hard for that. That takes a lot of effort and a lot of patience and a lot of time.
Right.
Like, and if you don't have that mentality, like, go marry rich. Shoot.
Right. Don't do that. My mom would always say, well, it's just as easy to marry someone richer than poor. You might as well marry a rich.
Right.
But you don't want to look for that. You got to be in love. But yeah, I mean, it's too late for these poor kids in Gen Z. It really is. I mean, and I don't, thank God, knock on wood, I don't have any mental issues. And so I can't imagine, having mental issues and it really being part of your brain's, deal. And now you're stuck with it.
Right.
Like, and I don't know what the therapy is or all of those kinds of things, but it's because they haven't had any life experiences. It really, it is. I mean, we read about this, I think maybe 10, 15 years ago with, I think it's China, or was it Japan? One of those countries, because they just had them working constantly and just, in school constantly, and they had the highest rate of suicide, and they had the high, and it causes problems. You've got to
the
be
anxiety, the depression, all that.
right. And I think the article even. Why don't you tell us this? They had some stats on different populations.
I loved how the article touched that 1 in 6 African American categorized with their mental health over 50% of white Americans, and I thought that was interesting because my theory on this is that African Americans, we've had to work our whole lives to be 10 times better than our counterparts. It's just a reality of our situation.
Right.
And recently 50 Cent actually just did an interview, and he was saying that we don't have time for mental health. We don't have time to have those feelings of depression, of anxiety and stuff, because we're constantly working towards our next goal and working to be better.
Yeah, but mental health isn't a choice, right? The reason why probably your population doesn't have it is because why? They've had life experiences.
That's
because
true.
They've had to work for everything, because they've had to put themselves through school or open up their own businesses or be a music star or whatever the case is. You've all had to fight, right, for it a lot more. So I mean, that's life experiences. That's why you guys probably don't have the mental problems now that the white population does of students graduating.
And definitely with the shelter thing, I feel like a lot of our white counterparts, they're more sheltered than we are. Like you said, we didn't have the same opportunities growing up. Most of us didn't have the same opportunities growing up as our white counterparts. And we struggled in that sense where we're constantly grinding and constantly having those life experiences that are going to make us stronger and more hardworking, more resilient towards the workforce and being ready for real life. And I feel like at a young age, I was sheltered to a certain extent. Like, my parents were very successful and we had things growing up. But my husband, on the other hand, wasn't. And a lot of life experiences beat him down when he was younger, but he's probably the most hardworking person I know. You know what I mean? And it's because he had those life experiences, like you said. So, I mean, I thought it was an interesting fact. And they also said that Asian Americans register the same metric at 63%, and same thing with Hispanics.
So that that's kind of the same thing. That it's interesting that they say Black Americans here, that their categories, is so low.
Yeah.
But I think it's because they're more prepared, because they're out there in the real world. They're getting hard knocks. I mean, I can't imagine these, like, for instance, let's say you have a sales job, right? And you're out, so you've never been told your whole entire life no, right? Because Johnny Boy's been in the car and mom's been driving him around, or dad's been driving him around all the whole time to all the sports events, and he's never lost because everybody's a winner and everybody gets a trophy. And so then all of a sudden he graduates college, right? And he goes and gets, and that's what happens. A lot of these kids end up in sales positions. And they're getting no. And then you got a cold call. Like, I had a cold call. You have to cold call, and it's brutal, right? But I had life experiences, even though I hated it, and I wanted to quit my job 900 million times. But when I look back at it, what a blessing it was for me. But and so this kid's out there who's never been told no, and the first thing he does is call up somebody and they tell him no. I mean, of course he's going to be stressed out, because then his boss is going to tell him, Johnny Boy, you get on that phone and you make your 100 phone calls today. And you better have some yeses in there. And so he's got to sit there on the phone and be told no. No wonder he has anxiety. He didn't want to pick up the phone. Right? I wouldn't want it either if you've never heard it before. Is my point. Is my point. And I mean, yes, I do, because I have thought about this often, like how much is genetics and how much is, I was adopted, and so I grew up in an Armenian family, and just, I always had thought, like, what is socially environmental of who you become,
Right.
and then what is genetics.
Right.
And I don't know in this, in this I would say it's more social and how your parents environmental.
Yeah.
It's more environmental than genetics.
Oh, for sure.
Kind of like, is that genetics? Is it that, you know what I mean?
Based on your environment.
Yeah.
I think it's for sure based on your environment. I feel like, again, I grew up in the same house as my sister, but it was different times. We're 6 years apart. We were parented very differently. My parents were definitely more hard on myself than they were on her.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was definitely based on, we're very similar in some ways, but then when it comes to work ethic, it's very different.
Right.
And you can definitely tell.
Right.
And it's just based on our environments. We just grew up same household, just parent differently.
Yeah. And what I see too is, people used to say, well, I remember when I was growing up and there was like one wayward child, maybe that family had 4 kids, and they're like, how did this child, they have 4 beautiful children, and this one is just like the devil.
I feel like every family has that one.
Right, but if you really break it down, the ones that because I went back and looked at it, and the ones that were like that, they were raised differently.
Yeah.
It could have been like the parents got divorced, and then the one maybe lived with the father, or the one lived with the mother, and then, they were babied and coddled, and it's more of that. It's more of the child has problems anyway. Like I have a bunch of nieces and nephews too, and and so you look at 3 kids, and then you're like, well, this one, maybe has ADD, and this one has something else, and the other one's a rock star, and everything goes perfect for him, but the one that's gone through the trials and tribulations ended up to be the most prosperous. In other words, like, really a go-getter, and
right,
take care of himself and that kind of thing, and so you just like, you don't know, but at the same time, that kid went through. They were raised differently than the rest of the children.
Of course.
That's why the first child is different than the second child and the third, because I've been through this before. Different. They're raised different. The first child is like my best friend, she's like a sister to me. When she had her first child, I was like, oh Lord, I'm not traveling to Europe. I'm not going anywhere. I can't leave my baby. And the child cried all the time and just was like, oh, and then the second one came around, and it was like, oh, I've been through this already for a year. She was like, she totally changed, and she was a totally different person with him too. So the second one is going to be different because they're not going to have everybody at their beck and call, right? So you learn by conditioned response. It's like Pavlov's theory almost, that you learn from that. And so the second child's going to be different. Then the third one comes, and they've got 2 older siblings that are treating them a different way. And the parent probably isn't around as much. And so that's why each kid ends up to be a little different.
Yeah, I agree. I'm for sure guilty of that. Like, I for sure coddle my second in a whole nother way than I coddle my first. So I'm for sure like guilty of that 100%.
Yeah. So a few other things that they mention here. They say burnout, defined as a state of prolonged physical and psychological exhaustion, was also found to be a particular problem, hitting more than 1/3 of those polled every single week. Burnout, defined as a state of prolonged physical and psychological exhaustion. So physical, I don't know, maybe you're doing a physical job, but psychological, what, just working is psychological?
Well, I feel like if you work and you do the same thing every single day, that could be something that's psychologically like burnt out. Like, you can get burnt out for that. Luckily, like for myself, I love what I do because I do something creative, and I do something creative every single day. So it allows my brain to work in a way where I don't get bored. But like, I couldn't imagine sitting at a desk and doing the exact same thing every single day for the rest of my life. Would drive me crazy. Yeah. And I feel like that's where that psychological thing happens, where when you don't pick something that you love to do every single day, it doesn't allow you to enjoy it. If you're gonna work and do something that you love, or that's gonna have your mind constantly going, versus doing the same thing every single day.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Another thing they mentioned is that the recent rise in working from home also had a stark impact on burning out. Workers in their 20s with many feeling that they can't handle the environment of a modern office. Well, that is exactly what we've been talking about, is they have no life lessons, right? So they don't know how to transition into anything. It's like you give them one task to do and that's all they can do.
Right.
You know, I mean, I see it in all the, I probably go through 10 applications a week and talk to one person.
Yeah.
And I can see it in all of them. Like, it's just, it just is astonishing about how they just really can't handle everything, and it's all about them, and it's what their needs are, and it's
a different day and age.
It's a different day and age.
It's a different day.
I really think our country is in a world of hurt. I think we're in a world of, and I'm going to do a separate podcast about this, based on immigration, and the workforce, and I really think we're in a world of hurt because, one, we don't have the caliber of people that can do a lot of jobs. Gen Z being, like, you know, if you can't transition, they're just not fighters.
Right.
So there's going to be less positions filled, and anyway, but that's going to be a different show. But but it's one of the things that I'm talking about. I think there just isn't strategic people that can do strategic things out there in the coming up in the workforce.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Let's see, it says, and among those who reported feeling burned out every single week, a startling 42% said they plan on quitting their jobs within the next year. This is what I'm saying. Like, you know, they're like, oh, unemployment's at an all-time low. We're at 3%. Well, if 42% are planning to quit their job in a year.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting because just the longevity of people at companies have shifted. I mean, I've seen in a management position previous to this that the turnover for people was so crazy because people don't want to work.
Right.
Like, people generally just, like, don't want to work. And I feel like with COVID, when the COVID crisis happened and everyone was at home, work environment shifted. Everyone was like, well, like, I can work from home and I can do this for the rest of my life, which is great because, like, I get it. I'm a mom. I would love to work from home all the time. But I like coming into the office. Like, I genuinely like that space of being outside of my home because when I'm at home, I take my breaks and I clean, and I don't want to do that all day.
Right.
But people, the gap of not wanting to work with COVID and the burnout and being in the office has changed the dynamic at work, and they don't stay in one place for very long.
Right.
Like, the average lifespan of an employee is about 6 months these days.
Right. So I was looking for a new homeowner association manager while the company's growing, and so I had a few candidates, and that I took a look at. It's a very specialized position. And I looked at this guy's resume, and literally the last 5 jobs, and he worked for nationwide homeowner association management companies, large companies.
Yeah.
He stayed 6 months
at each one.
At each position.
It's like,
and then tried to say the reason why is, oh, he had problems, oh, he had to take care of his mama, oh, he had to do this, oh, he had to do that.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I had somebody else interview me here in the office, Veronica, and she said that, you know, he was worthy of a second interview, but then I emailed him, and then we had some discussion, and I was like, no, I'm not having it.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are or what you do, like, you don't stay somewhere 6 months every single time, 5 times in a row. Like, it was just like, the position's not, you know, we tested him for his personality traits, and he actually was, I think, 20% in the HOA management category. So that really is his problem, is that he's not meant, you know, we try and put the right people in the right seat.
Yeah.
And he's not the right person for an HOA manager position. He doesn't have the personality for it, but he continually thinks he does. So, you know, he's just going to run around for a while, I guess, and then try and figure it out.
Or be place to place for the next 6 months.
Right.
Time.
Right.
Have a new job every 6 months.
Right. Right.
I mean, do you even get health benefits at that point?
I know, because, well, you do it 6 months because you get health benefits. Well, our program is 90 days, but I don't think you probably have health benefits by then. But Jesus, I can't remember. I mean, it's just, I was like, I literally was not going to interview him at all. And then we thought, well, we'll just do it for shits and giggles and see what happens, you know. And sure enough, I was like, second interview not happening.
Well, James, I'm coming up on my 6th month, and I guess I'm still here. So you're stuck with me.
I am stuck with you. So anyway, I guess that does it for us today. And I'm glad we had this discussion though, because it's still, you know, you don't have all the answers, but I think that if, you know, parents can really realize there's going to be a tough thing that, because it's societal too, because all the other kids are doing it, you know, all the other kids are doing it and getting these cars and getting this and that and the other. You're not doing, I know this, I'm 100% resolute and sure because of my own life and seeing the lives of others that I grew up with.
Yeah.
That no matter how much wealth you have, no matter how much money you don't have, that your child needs to not have everything. And you know, there's the statistics that say C college students run the world. It's not the A students, it's not the B students. The largest percentages of successful people in the United States were C students in college.
Yep.
So you know what, folks? It's not that damn serious. Let your child, you know, have life experiences. Let him get out there at a young age and experience life so that when he does get out of college, which I wholeheartedly believe that everybody should get an education, that he is able to have a job, be successful at it, be productive at it, not have anxiety in his life, not have stress, and not have depression, because that's the worst.
Amen to that.
So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.